Welcome to Caffeinated Mornings, a show built around the idea of more conversation and less presentation. We dive deeper into discussions that go beyond the surface of the work. A big thank you to our sponsors who make this show possible. Today's episode is brought to you by the award-winning, strategically driven, independent, full-service agency TDA Boulder. And we can't forget Buck Ross Productions and Coop Studios for helping us capture and share this show with you. A special thanks to the Coffee Ride for keeping us caffeinated, and to Realtor Michelle Sander and the Zeal Group at Remax, CMCI Studio, Snappy Little Numbers for our theme music, and Pro Photo Rental for their continued support. In this episode, we join everyone's favorite designer and host, Jay Farrakane, in his recent conversation with Faye Amarante. Faye is a designer, creative strategist, co-host of the Zero Waste Creatives podcast, and the founder of her own agency, Experimenta. In this talk, we explore the importance of mental well-being for all creatives and the push for creative sustainability in all the work that we do. We also get into expanded empathy and radically shared responsibility by including those who lead or contribute from outside of the traditional creative process, and discuss how this has led to creative clarity in Faye's work. So get comfortable, get caffeinated, and get ready to be inspired and informed by our new friend, Faye Amarante. Let's go.
I feel I'm so fortunate to get to catch up with you today. It's going to be really awesome. I want to talk. This is Faye Amarante.
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 Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Amarante. Amarante.
Amarante.
Yes.
There we go. We got it. Background in design, creative strategist, leader, and now co-host of Zero Waste Creatives podcast with your partner Brandy.
Hit the subscribe button.
Hit the subscribe button now. Support us all.
Yes.
And now you've started your own agency, Experimenta. I kind of want to start in there, but I want to, for the audience that's kind of joining us now, it's important to think about a little bit about your background and where you came from. Born and raised in Brazil. Reimagining design systems for gigantic companies like Hershey's, Coca-Cola, led brand and design and vision for Danone. Doing a lot of design and digital work with architecture firms and things like that. And now running your own shop. And I mentioned that earlier, Experimenta. What was the impetus of finally starting to do Experimenta? What led you to that's it. I'm gonna launch my own thing.
What's funny is that it's been almost 5 months since Experimenta has been
in this day and age,
it's
running.
Been up.
That's
so
5 years now.
So I feel like there's a huge bad of you to bring me here, because it's not been it's been 10 years and we're crushing. It's it's the very beginning, very, very, very beginning. So it's almost like you're seeing the very, very early step one.
Yes.
To be quite honest, I nearly lost my entire health, physical and mental. By the time halfway through 2023 came up, I had the worst possible sequence of years and years of anxiety and panic attacks. I had, by every stretch of the imagination, my blood tests, which I took a lot of them, showed perpetual chronic anemia, showed I was diagnosed with celiac once upon a time. I was every single possible autoimmune crisis, as you can imagine, I think I've gone through. For most of my career, I put them all in a really sealed box. No one would see it because you're crushing on LinkedIn, right? So you have the title and you have the job and you're doing this. But in the meantime, I had 2 giant pill boxes of supplements and medicine that I was
taking.
Trying
to keep yourself going.
To barely keep myself up and running, not even going. So at some point, I think I realized that was not sustainable.
And was it clear to you right off the bat, where's this all coming from?
It started more I thought everyone, raise your hand, imaginary audience, because we don't have an audience, right?
We don't, no, there's no one here.
But imaginary audience, raise your hand if you as a creative were told this thing about you have to just burn the midnight oil in the beginning and you just have to crush it. And you do it now and sleep later. Yeah, no one can relate to that. It's a very unique, it's just me. And this myth of the struggling artist transferred to creative professional, that you just have to accept the price. The cost of entry of this is you don't sleep, you don't eat, you get mistreated, you get toxic environments, and that's just what you have to deal with. That's just so much bullshit, but I didn't realize that my entire life.
Right.
But my body had a few disagreements with me on that.
Yeah.
So I think after I had been already going through a lot when I was at Danone. Danone was actually the thing that moved me here to Colorado. And after I left Danone and went to Coca-Cola, then really it spiraled completely out of control. And I had this ridiculously enormous house on which I laid on the ground level in the kitchen, having panic attacks every week. So that wasn't really doable. And I, in some way, refused to believe that was a unique experience, because at that point, I had already been the depository of a lot of other creatives telling me how they felt, how they were doing. My teams always were able to tell me that this was not doable, this was not sustainable. We had those conversations. And so I think Experimenta came from the fact that there's so much waste happening in working like that.
Right.
For us, we as human beings, we have limited resources just as much as Earth has. We don't have infinite time. We don't have infinite cortisol. We don't have infinite livers. We have one. Well, we have 2 kidneys, but you get one of them out and like, ugh. So there's only so much we can do with ourselves before we reach a point of no return. And reaching that point of no return is a really tough place to come back from. And so Experimenta came from my, I don't know, maybe it's 5 months. So you all, let's talk again in 3 years. But I believe that there is a better way of doing this work that is not this bullshit. We have a proprietary process and it's this like 5 imaginary magical steps. It's not that. I think that there are some basic things that we just don't do as creatives that I hope I can show that they can be done.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because as I've gotten to know you, and it is funny to think about your company having only been around for 5 months. But in reality, you've been doing what you've been doing for a long time.
Actually,
and I think,
today is the 12th.
Do we make it to 5 months?
Yeah, it's literally almost basically precisely 5 months.
This was a good timing then, because like I do think in the speed of which things move today, maybe that's one of the things that we need to make better choices about. But like a lot can happen in that time frame. And actually, you know, when you were saying the thing about lying on the floor, anxiety ridden, that kind of stuff, I heard this interesting thing. As a person who works on brands a lot, I think about brands, what it means to the people who consume them. But this definition I heard of the brand was a brand is the measure of how your employees feel on Sunday night. And I'm like, that says a lot, because as a creative myself and having worked at agencies and things like that, there were those like, dude, what the fuck is gonna happen this week? Like there was an anxiety about it, and good creative doesn't always come from that. Rarely comes from that kind of point of view.
It's bullshit that it like this whole thing of like, the best
cooker.
Creative is the pressure at 11 p.m. No, it's not.
Well, and we were talking a little bit about it, and the one thing that I've kind of, and this was self-taught, but the one thing I've tried to do in running my own practice is taking off the end cap, I call it. And like, not, even if it's a false taking it off, like making myself feel like I have the time I need to do this is very important in my practice. And I had this aha when I was listening the first time we met. And I think I'm a little bit of I always joke that I'm kind of a Cro-Magnon thinker, not necessarily super, high functioning maybe. And
hey, I have ADHD. We're
well,
good.
And this is why we're the same. But you mentioned sustainability, and I was instantly like, oh yeah, like the impact on the planet. But then when I started really realizing it being more about us managing our resources as creatives, it's super important and doesn't get talked about a lot. And so I'm so excited because you're bringing it, I feel like, to the foreground. And the interesting thing is I've had more students in the last year or so ask me about ethical things, like, should I work on these kinds of things? I mean, I had so many friends that worked at a very large organization here that might have worked on Burger King that were vegans. And I'm like, I don't know how you do that. And how are you, but it comes back to they weren't taught to make certain choices about what they could work on. And in the lead up to this, I think one of the big ahas I had is I think inherently creative people we're like almost super responsible humans by default. And I was just saying this to you, I think that organizations realize that all we want to do as creatives is the best job. And we'll do kind of anything to make sure that that happens. And I think it gets preyed on a little bit. And so like, maybe you can talk a little bit about what you wish you saw different in organizations and the way they kind of treat creatives. And maybe that's one place we start. Because I know you made some choices as a manager within organizations way before you made the big leap to, hey, this is going to be a big change. But your honesty approach to a lot of your employees was really interesting.
There's so much. Like I need, like, if I can get like a pen and a pencil, because I want to take notes so that I don't.
Here, take this.
Give me this.
There you go.
Yes,
Write it down.
awesome.
And then it's subpart 2, question B. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, because like I don't want to interrupt you, but I have so
you're
many
good.
bubbly thoughts. The first one being when you think about sustainability, let's just, for the sake of zeros and simplification, let's just say that the client has $100,000 as a budget.
Yep.
Reasonable?
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah.
By the way, anyone wants to give me $100,000
Or 10,000, it doesn't matter. But just let's do like 100 so that we don't have to do very complex math,
Right.
because I think you and I are not going to be able to do that right now.
There's a reason I went into creative.
Correct. Same. So that budget didn't just come from like thin air. That budget didn't materialize itself out of will. A company like a beverage company has to sell beverages to make profits, to be distilled into budgets. A software company needs to sell subscriptions that then become the cost of doing that, subtracts from their total revenue, that becomes profit, that becomes budget. So budgets, they come from actual consumption of real resources, it being crypto mining, which I don't want to get into, but whatever, or it being, resins becoming bottles with sugar and water, or wheat with butter. All of those things come from somewhere physical here.
Right. It's a resource.
Right. It's a resource.
Yeah.
That budget is paying for something that we are selling. We're selling creativity. I am selling to you, client, me doing creativity for this thing. Creativity is not abstract. And that's one of the biggest things that I believe we've gotten it wrong so badly, because I went to design school in college, and I had amazing professors. I had some not so great, but I never really talked about creativity as this, there is an actual lived body experience, brain-wise, glands-wise, hormones, blood. There is biology in creativity that if we had this information, I believe we could unionize creative professionals, because there are some very real things that creatives need to have to sell creativity. Right. And if I tell you, hey, Jay, I want you to make coffee, but I'm not going to give you coffee beans, but please make me a cup of coffee, you're going to be like, I don't know. And that's sometimes what we do with creatives.
Right.
Well, because creatives do that with creatives too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. So when I look into teams that I've worked with where I've had a pattern that was coincidental but was really tough, which is every time I arrived to be a creative director or to be a leader of a team, that team was in shambles, or there was a lot of distress happening. There was something going on that I never arrived to a team that was...
A lot of leadership changes happen because of the rubble that needs to be repaired, right?
Yeah. And that team didn't need marching orders. That team didn't need me to be tough and hard ass. Like, that team actually, every single human in that team actually just needed to be respected and to be heard and to have someone ask, like, how are you really doing? And given those basic parameters, then the tools that you have to make coffee with coffee beans and water, I start having those, because what happens in creativity within our bodies requires a lot of different things that we don't get practice from college, through our first job, through probably where we are currently. So when you ask me about the story, I was born and raised a creative. My mom is a psychologist, my dad is an architect. I learned to draw before I could walk or talk. I went to design school at the age of 17, the only program that I signed up for, and I was in between design and architecture. I knew that I was going to do something that I was going to synthesize thinking into creativity. And I went to college, And I got my first job before I even graduated. I was a full-time designer in the middle of college, and I got my first agency gig right before I graduated. So I was born in in advertising, actually. Then I went to design. And I can't even tell you how many times I slept at night. I would bring like 2 or 3 bundles of clothes.
Like you'd stay in class?
No, in the agency.
Yeah. Oh, got you. Yeah.
Because you never know when you're going to leave. I cannot, like, the smell of Subway sandwiches drives me sick right now.
Yeah.
Because in
It's
Brazil,
visceral, probably was so connected to that horrible experience.
Yeah, because Subway was the only shop open under the agency that I worked at. And that's where if you were there after 11 p.m., that's the only thing you could get.
Yeah.
And that just drives me sick because I ate so many of those. And so all of that, then I worked at Hershey for a long time. Actually, working at Hershey is the thing that inherently made me move to Boulder, because I ended up working with Crispin and with SRG.
Yep.
And then
Here you are.
here I am.
Yeah.
Fell in love with this place. But arriving to those teams, what I realized was that, that feeling that you have when you know that you're being gaslit and bullshitted?
Yeah.
But we don't say it. So we show up in a meeting to kick off the creative project, and around that table, we are all waiting for the shoe to drop. All of us. We're waiting for when the client is going to act crazy, when someone is going to give their opinion, when they're going to pull the budget in half, when they're going to crush the timeline. But also the client on the other side, those people there that are hiring us, they're waiting for when we're going to go haywire and not answer the brief. They're waiting for when we're going to fuck it up. They're waiting for when their leadership is going to come crushing them down and they're going to have to do something.
Right.
So everyone there
Or
is...
or they're going to pivot on the brief or something like that.
So everyone there is in a situation where, like, shit is not talked about, but there's stuff happening around that entire meeting room.
From day one,
From
usually,
day
too.
zero,
Yeah.
from before we get the brief,
Yep.
from before the client actually reaches out to us and says, hey, we need help with this. So to drive your point around honesty, what I found and it might be like a filter due to undiagnosed ADHD at the time, but I also believe that it's part of who I am, is, hey, why are we doing this? And asking that, and asking, because I was in the client side at that point, so I could ask my marketing friends, my brand friends, because then you start seeing that everyone is a human with lots of humanity and lots of human things. Life is lifing everywhere. Yeah. And getting to that meeting without talking about the shit that is happening in the background is useless, because it's going to come and bite us in the ass ridiculously often, every single time. It doesn't matter what we do. We can't put it aside.
Yeah.
So putting it into the table, I have this really fun, for the non-existent audience, there is this really fun visual that I use in presentations to both clients, but also in talks. That is, we think that the creative process is this la-da-da-da-da-da, like we brief.
People think it's like smocks and berets.
Yes, it's like we brief and then we work and then we do this and then we present, yay, it's approved. And all of our timelines are built this way.
Yeah.
Where we're like, round 1 and then round 2, and then everyone is like, oh my God, this is amazing. But what we know is going to happen is round 1, rebrief, oh, that's not it.
Yeah.
And by the time it all happens, we've done the same thing 7 million times. The agency lost profitability halfway through that. The client started planning B and C and D with another
They're
agency.
Like, who else do you know? Call somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we find out later that they were parallel pathing with 3 different people. What if we actually talked about that instead of pretending we're in La La Land all the time? So that is the honesty on that side, but then the honesty with my teams on telling them that I don't know how to actually do that. Yeah, I'm a creative director, I'm your leader, but it doesn't mean that I was born somehow in a cave with all the answers and I came with this magical elixir of brightness. It's not like that. So honesty can be very unsettling if you're used to pretending.
Well, and I think the part the funny thing is I think it's cultured in to the way that work gets done today. And I remember reading, it's funny, like as someone who I don't think I'm very like permission based, meaning like I need to get clearance to do this. But I read an article about some design team, and I remember them kind of saying to the fact, the deadline for the presentation to the client was coming up. And they said to themselves, like, we just don't have the work figured out. So they used it more like a workshop session, and they showed up very honest. And they were like, hey, you know what? We don't think we've got it cracked. They were, I would say somewhat vulnerable at that point, right? Like, we don't have this cracked. We want to show you what we've been working on. Because I think that's the other thing that puts, clients are people too, right? So at some point they have their anxieties and their whys. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that doesn't get asked enough, if you ask me. If there's one question that must be asked in design, any creative engagement, is why? Why are we doing this? Why does it have to be like this? Why is it that deadline? No one asks those questions. A lot of times you just sign up for it. But the thing that was interesting about this little narrative, and that gave me the permission to kind of work more the way that I like to, was they called up the client and they said, and that's why I didn't work well at agencies, because I would do this, and it's hard to book that time,
that's why
right?
Experiment is not an agency.
And I would be like, hey, I have a question about this. Like, why are we doing this thing? And then, the up-reps would get, and they're like, what are you doing? Like, that's burning time, and we don't have that. And anyway, the story though was, we don't have it all figured out. So when we come to you and present, we're just going to walk you through what we've been thinking about. And to me, that was like a really interesting moment, because it's inviting the client in. It was like saying, hey, we're only as good as the information we have. And I think that was the takeaway too, is like, if I look at any project, like, why didn't I do well on that? I wasn't informed enough. But the point of showing up honestly and just being like, I'm going to set the table with, we don't know if we have it all figured out. And I guess the end point is the client loved one thing in it. So it was fine. But I've gone into meetings before where we've used it more like a workshop. And I think that's the way I prefer to work. And it's hard to do when you're all in a structure that maybe isn't one that governed by yourself too.
Yeah, there's a cycle there, and you have to have lived through in-house to see this.
Yeah.
Which is, there's a mirroring effect. The client side is a certain structure, so agencies, especially the big ones, grow to mirror that structure.
Yep.
Without knowing that no one has it all figured out. So they're all basing their structure on their assumption of what's happening on the client side. The client is assuming that the agency has that structure because that's the way they work. And then everyone is just working under, I am assuming this, you're assuming this. So the assumption here and the assumption here are working together, not the real things.
Right.
And to your point around the why, the question that we've been asking at Experimenta, before we even touch a single pixel, before we put a single word on a single Post-it wall, PowerPoint, Miro, whatever, is, what's at stake for you, human? Okay, CMO, you have this new whatever. What is the risk for you personally on this? What is that you're bringing as a human into this work that we don't know and we should? Because I need to know what that frown on your head as VP of marketing really means, because otherwise my team, my junior designer, my creative director, my whoever, we're all going to assume that you fucking hate the work. And that might actually mean that you just had a really bad week of sleep. So I would love for us to actually say, before we even touch a single piece of the work, what are we here and who are we bringing into this before we start assuming things? Because there's a lot of this, we develop an amazing relationship with the client, but we leave that to chance.
Right.
And leaving it to chance actually bites us in the ass again, because we're not actually making space for creating the culture as a team. Because every time we come together, if we're doing a new brand, if we're doing a creative campaign, if you're redoing the product, if you're launching something new, every time a client and an agency team come together, that becomes a team. And we are tribe animals. We're mammals. This is a cave. We're wearing fancy things, but we're all cave people. This whole thing is very new, you guys. Like, none of this is real. And we have all of those survival skills that are all working. So if we don't do that, our bodies are going to be like, run away from this because this is threatening, but we're going to be overriding this and saying, no, I'm going to just stay right here. And then we
do teach ourselves that, like, we're not going to run away from this now.
Yeah.
And then that's where you start putting up shields.
And
stuff too.
And then you collapse in panic attacks eventually if you do that enough. And so starting with not just talking about why are you doing the work, why is this important for the company, why is it important for you, or what are you afraid of, or designer being able to say, this is the first time I do a food product and I've done only tech my whole life, or a writer saying, I've never written for this audience before. Being able to actually voice the things that we're bringing into the project aside from our expectations in our brief and the objectives and all of this stuff is real. But the humans that are bringing into this are even more real than all of that stuff.
Is this where you kind of get to that term, radically shared responsibility? Is there an agreement that comes together about that?
Yeah. So it's funny
because that idea of, I think a lot of the onus in most creative engagements is placed, hey, we're the client, we gave you the brief. And then whoever's managing the output, it's all on them now. There isn't a shared thing. So when I heard that in our kind of discussions, I was like, that's interesting to make it more of a unified front. We're all in the cave together.
Yeah.
And inviting them in.
Touch my hand. You see how cold it is?
Yeah.
Do you think it sounds like I'm confident and I'm like speaking from a place? Yeah. I'm fucking nervous as hell. That is really important because we all exude this, oh, I'm here and I have it all together. I really don't. I really do not. I am like about to crumble every single day.
But in that vein, isn't that one of like that empathy or that I'm going to say sensitivity?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
I think it's a superpower.
Come with me.
Okay.
Okay. So creativity is not abstract, you all. I don't care what you learned. It's not. Our bodies have brains. Yes, everyone has a brain.
Yes.
Cool. The chairs don't, but we do. They're not here. I forgot. Imaginary audience. We have brains. Those brains are integrated into this thing called nervous system. If you're interested in it, there's a million different ways that you can learn about it. I'm not going to give you anatomy class because I'm not a biologist or a doctor, but I'm curious enough to know this. Creativity is when we have all of our repertoire shit, from our talk over at Stash to the movie that you watched to the class that I had back in 1999, like all of the stuff that we've experienced, that we've gathered as repertoire becomes this thing. And then we have this funnel. This funnel is our nervous system. We can funnel all this stuff and recombine into different things, and that's creativity. And we can do that as a group. It's pretty fucking awesome because then I combine your repertoire with my repertoire and we're like, oh my God, this is so rad. We can like do this. The problem is we only do that if we're not on threat response. And the other problem with that is our brains and our bodies don't give a fuck if you're the client or the agency or the creative or the writer or the CMO or the new brand person that just arrived at the client side. The moment we say we're going to redesign this experience, the moment we say we're going to create a campaign, the moment we say whatever it is that project is, we become a group that is interdependent. So CMO shows up and has a frown and has not talked about why that frown is coming up. Designer is already threat response. And that is contagious as hell. So everyone starts speaking up because what happens is if we're in the wild and a bobcat shows up and you're like, and you start running, I'm going to run. I'm going to be like, not like, hey, Jay, what is going on right now? Can you please theorize with me? I'm going to just know that there's something threatening you that I should be picking up and we got to go. The same thing happens on that table, but we pretend that is not happening and we stay there. That kills creativity because creativity requires us to be able to access this stuff. And if we can't, we will pretend, we will go into performance. The opposite of creativity is stage performance, when we all do the thing that we're supposed to do, and then we regurgitate something and make it look really sexy and polished. And then it does terrible with the client. And then we blame the brief, we say that the agency didn't get it, whatever.
Right.
So radically shared responsibility is everyone on what we call it, Experimenta roundtables. Every single team is a round table because there is a center of the round table. Every circle has a center.
Yep.
But everyone in there is equally responsible for holding the space where creativity will happen. Showing up and paying for the work is not enough. Showing up and creating stuff is not enough. So clients and creatives equally need to share the responsibility of what it means to create a space where creativity will actually exist. Not only exist, thrive.
And creating that environment, have you run into a place yet where you're like, we need to push a timeline or something like that because the circle isn't really ready to kind of function?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the other thing too, is back to the why, is a lot of times timelines are super arbitrary.
Yeah.
You know, like it always killed me. Like I ran internal creative groups for a long time. And the thing that always cracked me up is I'm like, why this timeline? You know, they're like, oh, I'm going on vacation. Sorry, buddy. That's not, like, to me, I'm like, oh, that's not a super critical thing. We can talk about that. How do we move it around? And that, I don't know. It's just always interesting to hear about like all the forces in effect, because in some way, you know, a good functioning creative team is it's a catalyst, right? It's like all these parts coming together to make some beautiful result, you hope.
But then the creative team, us creatives, need to be willing to admit that on the client side, they're creative beings too.
Yes.
Are we? Are we willing to do that after learning for decades that there's a black box of creativity and no one gets in, and the client is really stupid, and what the hell is the client doing, and look at how shitty that thing, and can you believe that asshole said that? Like,
well,
are we?
I think it's funny because I was just talking to Ingrid about this, that I think all beings are creative in some way. And you know, back to your idea of the repertoire coming down, right? Like, creativity does come from that funnel set, and everyone has their own unique funnel set, which is amazing to me. And if I can harvest from that, I think that's I mentioned, you know, I grew up listening to punk rock and skateboarding, so I have this subversive trait built in where I'm going to steal everything I can and take it and make it my own if I can. And to me, I think it's just not taught enough in people to look at everybody at the table as a creative, but ego gets in the way of that a lot of times. I think the one thing, and that's, I mean, if you look at the ad agency, there is really fantastic work that has come out of the fact of like people were so prideful about what they were doing, but there's also like really terrible work that has come out of that thing. And it's such a funny balance, right? You can't take it out, but you have to manage it quite a bit. And that's actually what I was saying to Ingrid was we had 3 really great teams working on this one project here. And I call it the golden era of Boulder. And
just wait until the next era comes.
It's here right now. I feel it. That's why everyone's back
another
in
high
this
five.
room.
Don't let me hanging. Okay.
But it was funny because like the reason that all worked so well is there was honesty in the room. Everyone kind of was like, hey, we don't really know how we're going to do this yet. But I think that's the cool part of creative too.
I mean,
like that people think it's manufactured and it can come out on an assembly line. It wants to be packaged that way, but is it really happening that way?
From a commercial perspective, you know, agencies, you get to a certain scale that you need to, because you're hiring then specialists, right? You're hiring account executives, you're hiring strategists. So you have to have a replicable and scalable process that then you become this proprietary process, you know? And so that's how you scale. But to your point, so just this week, I sent full-on open files to a client for us to work together on it yesterday. Open files, like the native files.
Yeah, to let him get into it and mess around?
Oh yeah, to let him get into it and mess around. And we did it yesterday. And it was great. And it was so funny because they were like, I promise I'm not gonna fuck anything up. And, and I'm like, dude, we want you to, I'm not saying that everything that you're gonna put in there is gonna be taken, but I want you to bring your perspective into it. And even the someone from an agency, I hate that term, someone from the agency side to say, no, please mess around, please go in, please, we're gonna include that. It's gonna be one of the ingredients. But that's your responsibility
again, too, right? I think that living that, it's funny, is I have a very, a dear friend, like almost like a brother, who comes from very traditionally trained ad creative background. And I'm fortunate enough that he hangs out in my studio. And I was on a call with a client one day, and I just, in the conversation of thought after showing work, brought up work on screen, shared it through Zoom, and we started moving things around together. And I got off the call and he is like, I can't believe you just did that. And I think my black box of design, and that's what he felt like we were challenging, what we were really, and I've always said that to my clients. I'm trying to demystify this because it's really an assembly of things. It's not like, and sometimes there is a beautiful moment where you're like, fuck, I didn't expect that to happen.
But also you need professional training and lots of experience in doing this.
Yeah. And well, but the black box I want you just give me the space. So it all comes back to space. And I think that was something that I picked up in one of your talks.
Yes.
That was really interesting to me because it's not that I'm trying to keep you out of this. I just need some time to put formula, ingredients in the mix so that when I come back and talk about options, and I always say this, there's super focal designers. I think I'm a very catalytic designer. I need inputs and I want to show a lot of variation because the client more often than not, whether I'm kind of like sugarcoating this, they know so much more about their business than I can ever. And that to me is a luxury in some weird way. I don't know the bullshit that you tried 3 years ago and blah, blah, blah. So I might be naive to that and I can bring back an idea that they might have already had, but we show it to them in a fresh way and maybe it makes some ground. But my goal is to always just invite them in and let them see that movement because then they start to understand, fuck, you are really working hard at this. too. And you've thought through all the things, because like if you just give them the one perfect PDF of what it was supposed to be, they go, well, did you think about blah, blah, blah? Yeah, of course, I'm a designer, dude. That's what we do. But I would rather than have to say that, just show it, you know? And so I think it was, I don't know, hearing about this, it's cool to me as someone who's been trying to work in something that's a little bit more, well, beneficial to my own personal health, but the work comes out better, it's neat to see a phrase put around it, because I've never had a way to categorize it in this radically shared responsibility idea.
Yeah, so radically, remember when you said like if you need to say something that like,
do it,
fucking do it. So when we say radically shared responsibility for the way in which creativity will exist, I want to demystify it even further. I just had a conversation with a potential client this week about this, and the question was, well, but I get this radically shared responsibility, Faye, but you know, when we're doing a creative project, like it's your responsibility to come up with the creative solution, and it's my responsibility to make sure that we are aligned. And then he went into this, you know, I don't know how many of you can talk jargon in corporate, but in this really well-aligned position so that we can maximize the like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let's step way back. The radically shared responsibility is you and I admitting that creativity will not happen if you are not at cause for the creation and nurturing of 5 ingredients, imaginary audience.
What are the 5?
5 ingredients. For creativity to exist, for our repertoire to come through our funnel of nervous system, we need to be able to not be on threat response so that we can do the thing. That is a combination of 5 things that will make us do the thing. The first one is constraints. Constraints is clarity. What is it that I am doing? I am doing a brand for anything? No, you can't do a brand for anything. I can do a brand for the service of caretakers in the elderly space. Okay, that's different. Clarity, cool. Yeah. We call clarity a lot like we call a good brief, but clarity is being able to talk about what it is that we're doing. It gives us a sandbox. We can really, really work in a sandbox, but give you the entire beach and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to go?
It's too much room to run around.
Too much. Constraints. The second one is experimentation. Experimentation is being able to try things out and see it burn and not be afraid that my creative director is going to come and eat my head off. Or that the client is going to have a tantrum.
Or they'll get terrified and they're like, they just don't getting it, but they don't understand that there's some lead up
to it. It's ability to let things break without the fear of repercussion. Mm-hmm. That is experimentation. The third one is play. And play is not, play. Play's, you know, when you go in the zone, you go into flow. We only go into flow if we're not afraid that the bobcat is coming behind us. Because if the bobcat is about to get behind, you're not going to get into flow. You're going to be like, okay, I'll do my
You guys feel something?
Yeah. Yes. The fourth thing, very important, space. Space is physical space. Let's say that we need to create an installation for whatever. We need the actual space to do it. We need time. We need resources and tools. We need coffee ground if I want you to make me a coffee cup. You need things that are very important that you cannot do without time, space, resources.
Right.
And then the final thing, which can be such bullshit, and I want to be very intentional about how to talk about it, is communication. It's not clear deadlines, good relationship with the client. It's not that. It's clear communication. Communication specifically is, I am here with you and I can tell in my body, because we have a thing called our nervous system that detects when we're being lied to. I can tell that you're telling me the truth. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I am not going to make myself stay here instead of doing what my body wants to do, which is run the fuck away from here because you're lying to my face. Yeah. And that is why a CMO needs to talk about what is really, really important to them. And a junior designer needs to be able to talk to that CMO about what's really, really important to them too.
And that's a terrifying prospect
that is
too.
Freaking terrifying process, because we are... How many
they
times?
haven't had the exposure a lot of times, like
exactly.
a junior person would.
You need facilitate, and that's where I'm like, you can't just like hack this stuff. You need to have experience, you need to have training, you have to be able to facilitate this. I can do this. There are a few people that I know that can do this, but it's not for everybody. But the maintenance and the creation of those 5 ingredients, which fit in one hand, which is very, very, very easy to remember, it's a radically shared responsibility. It's not just the creative team. You cannot just task the creative team to creating it, because the project means that this is a team.
Well, I was listening to your podcast recently, and the thing that really stuck with me is that you mentioned this thing that many creatives don't have the space to get the air they need, the tools to get the air they need. That was what you said. And it was really interesting to me because I don't think that's taught into whether you're talking to your account person and saying, I think you need to buy us a little more time because we're still experimenting or we're just now getting into play, whatever those things are. But space is such a critical thing. And this came up in our talk with Todd and Lucian last month. That was like this notion of gestation. And it stuck with me so much how important that is. And when you start to go and put design or creative onto an assembly line, right? Like, hey, it's a productized thing. We're paying you this much. We should get this thing out at the end. That's the hard part of like the weird magic space that happens in there. And I shouldn't use the word space double time, but there's
you can use it.
There's this thing that is like, we need a little bit of time to like let it mature in some way. And if you give me 4 months to work on something, is it going to be inherently better than a week? That's hard to say. But the fact that if you want to go in there and do really decent work, you do need air around it. You need the space. And that's like, we were talking about setting up our days, right? Like, how do we dedicate time blocks to certain things? And I mentioned this notion of like creative calisthenics. Like, I start with high hand, like low brain stuff, meaning I'll do edits or something like that I'm not thinking about solving, but then I keep big spaces parked for, okay, this is heavy dive in. And that's where I need like literally like, I got to go seal the airlock for a little bit and like no phones. Like, talk a little bit about like, was that an aha for you?
Oh, yeah.
Like, okay.
Oh, yeah. And all of this, the beautiful thing about all of this is that, and so Justin, my business partner, he's like, we need to have like a section on our website for all of the articles because you talk about all of the science behind it and people need to be able to actually go back to it. I'm like, yes, library of articles, absolutely. This is not made up stuff. What you're talking about is actually our brain functions this way. I work, think, brainstorm, You need to let your brain work in the background. There's a name for this that I don't remember because I have terrible functional memory. But this way in which there's no surprise if you're a runner, if you're a cyclist, if you're a climber, if you're whatever it is that you do, if you just walk outside, things are just happening in the background without you knowing. The connection of the pieces is happening here. If we don't let this happen, if we keep this whole, I will never sell a sprint. I will never go on a sprint because I refuse to call anything that we do a sprint because no one can sprint indefinitely. We live in Boulder. We have enough elite athletes here that you know that if you talk with a tree, you know that, no, you cannot sprint every week. Yeah. Because the idea that we move fast, it needs to be followed by space to play. And what that means is being able to let your thing do the thing. Yeah. Let our bodies do the things that they're supposed to do, which is work in the background, so that when we come, we have all of this stuff that grew while we were sleeping, nurturing ourselves, not running around with our heads cut off until 3 a.m., working on the RFP. And that's the thing that when I think about radically shared responsibility, I can't unsee the fact that when we talk about sustainable creativity, it is the ability of us to be able to sustain working on this. Being able to work on a sustained pace means that we're not burning ourselves out. And when we say burnout, I see burnout as this, we have finite resources just as much as Earth has. Like we you know, like when we get into a point that like we've consumed an entire Earth by the month of X.
Yeah.
How often do we consume an entire body within the day or the hour of X?
Way faster.
Right?
Way faster.
But we don't talk about that.
Right.
We keep it very, and then we glorify when we,
I haven't slept in 72 hours.
I can't even tell you how many times that there's no exception. Every single job I've had, the cringing me felt very real every time someone would go on a stage for a meeting, a town hall, for all hands on to say, and the team crushed it in 3 days, and I'm so glad that they're here. And you know, they've sacrificed so much. And I'm like, that's not celebration. These people need rest.
Yeah.
We need to sleep.
Well, and that is that kind of like, I was talking to somebody about this, like what's the old iron triangle was cheaper.
Oh, cheap, fast, and good.
Yeah, and like that fast one is the one that gets, I think, is the last one to ever come out.
Yeah.
these days. I wanted to, it's funny because like, getting to know you, both ADD, I don't think people are surprised by that. But like, I think most creative people have this very, obviously we're empathic, right? We get around people, you go into a room with the CMO and he's got a cringed brow and we're not taught to go, hey, are you doing okay? Like, I feel like I've just gotten to a point in my career where the bullshit meter comes on and I'm like, so why are you on me about this? And then my creative partner at that point will usually reveal like, oh man, I've been in it, like relationship trouble or something like that. And so then we get that out of the way and we can get back to doing the things. And I acknowledge it. Now I can be more sympathetic to you too. And I think that that's I would say in your experience, is there any detriment to being just too open in your work?
No, I mean, it's terrifying. It's not easy. It's an exercise. It's a practice. It doesn't just come naturally to me. I'm literally like my hand, it's like now cold and sweaty.
Right.
Because it's like advancing on the stages of
through our
anxiety.
Phases, yes.
Yeah.
You're doing great though. I want you to know that.
I mean, seriously.
Like,
I'm telling you. I'm not just making this shit up. But this is what I'm talking about right now. Them being able to know that my hand is cold is the equivalent of when
But it's a mechanism to help. We're going to get some shit out so that we can just
But it's also a mechanism for the person that is with me to say, it's safe for you to tell me what's going on with you too.
Yes.
If we don't jump in the cold water first, how can you tell that it's safe in there?
Right. Or when shit gets bad, how are you guys going to function together, which usually happens.
It will, because again, this timeline is not going to happen.
Right.
We are going to hit a point where we're going to argue, we're going to disagree, but I would love for all of the issues that we have at work to be with the work.
Well, and it's funny, is like, I've had a number of these discussions where I've asked in the room if there are account people, and if there are, I apologize. But I know that there's this beautiful calendar that gets built out, and whether I'm curmudgeonly or something,
it's so beautiful.
I usually go, that's great in theory, but when it gets real, that isn't going to hold together. And so, like, to me, I half feel sorry for them that the amount of investment that went into that time in creating that.
Okay, so where's the camera?
There's one right there, I think.
So this is the creative process as we think. Here's everyone. Yes? Is that how but it's more like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 100%.
So, a lot of your experiences, and I think the experiences, and I don't want to call them bad or damaging, but the experiences that really caused you to like reframe, this isn't right. Like creatives got to start to be taught in a different way. And, and back to shared responsibility, the organizations themselves need to learn to treat people definitely different.
But the organization is not a person. The organization is made of people. So the people in the organizations need to...
Yes. The people within that organization need to look at their resources like people versus batteries, right? Like using the matrix model.
Yeah.
What's the number one thing that you'd like to see like changed in like big design cultures? The Cokes of the world, the Danones, the massive entities, the agencies that kind of like, I mean, if you look at the amount of agencies that are in this town simply because Crispin was here and burned through a bunch of people and those people had to go out and continue doing what they're doing, is exemplary of that. And that company, I think they would be self-effacing and say, we understand that that's the culture we were doing. We had this overlord that we had to produce to. But what's the number one thing that you'd like to see change?
I think I think it's popular enough to talk about we need to be user-centric. We need to be consumer-centric. And I would love for the people in the organizations, because organizations are not people. Organizations are not human. The people in the organizations are humans. Even if they put a really heavy costume on every single day and go to work and come back home. Even if they sleep in costumes, even if
if they sleep in costumes in the building is what happens a lot of times, actually.
Yes, or even sometimes you get used enough to the costume that you think it's you.
Yeah.
So that's tough too. But I would love for the humanity in these people to start being taught. Because there's a lot of, if you go into an organization like Hershey or Danone or Coke, which are the ones that I have experience in working, but I also have friends in literally a million different places.
And regionally different. And that's the crazy thing to me is that
Regionally,
behaviorally,
yeah.
wherever you are on earth, it's treated the same.
Yeah, it's very different. But I mean, there's like a million different versions of this. Like agencies sometimes have like our ethos, and then you have the values, and then corporations have our leadership behaviors or our whatever. Like everyone has like the keywords, like the 5 to 6 or the manifesto or the whatever. And there's a basic like, can you train yourselves to go talk with anyone, being an audience of 500 to an audience of 1, and start with, here's what's happening for me. This is who I am today. How are you and who are you today? And the acknowledgement of when you have something like a reorg, when you have something like layoffs, going the second minute after that and saying, we're so excited about the future is the worst possible thing you can do to the team that is there standing behind. Because that team is now terrified that they're going to be the next in the chopping block, terrified that that team is pretending because, they can feel it. And so and I know that, this country has so much in the realms of like HR regulation. So there are things that you can and cannot say. So I understand that that's a very complex. I do not envy an HR specialist job at all. But we are shooting ourselves on the feet when we talk about being human-centric or consumer-centric, because every single company right now, until we have cyborgs powered by AI, which is a whole different thing, but we're all trying to connect humans to the thing we're creating. But if we don't connect ourselves to ourselves as humans first, we can't do that outside if you don't. It's like oxygen mask. Like you can put your oxygen mask to your neighbor first. You have to put it on yourself first. And that skill of being able to be human and to not politicize everything, not jargonify everything, because every single meeting in the client side sounds so similar.
But I think that is probably that operation from like fear-based. Right? I don't want you to think I don't know my job, blah, blah. And
if you're fear-based, you don't want them to think that you don't know your job. Therefore, you're going to protect yourself. Then you're going to put an armor, whatever that armor looks like. Mine was, I had so many different examples of what it looked like to be a successful creative director. To what should I...
Black turtlenecks. That's
one
of them.
From what should I wear? How should I speak? I need to kill my accent because people are going to think that I'm a moron from Brazil. But like,
I actually think it makes you international.
Well,
because then I show up and I talk like this and I'm like, oh man,
2024 me is very happy and agrees with you. 2009 me, in the middle of crisis trying to get a job, did not think this way. I was afraid that everything about me that was different was going to come at the expense of anything that I could ever make a living on.
Right.
So I spent years doing it and saying it. And actually, I've done a lot of the things that I completely condemn now. I've told designers front on that, I know that you want work-life balance, but like 12-hour days are just a thing that you're going to have to deal with in the beginning of your career. I said that. I've apologized to some of them recently, but I said that. And I actually believed it. And I thought I was doing a service saying this because I didn't
want to show the reality of it.
And that is actually a reality that we manufacture because we're not being real and human to begin with. We're not allowing ourselves to actually talk about what we're afraid of. We're not allowing ourselves to actually be human when everything that we're doing is human-based. Everything. And we've been in enough meetings that we can tell in the round table who is trying to hold the costume together and who is willing to maybe remove the mask for a little moment and actually, oh yeah, I can actually breathe better with this.
Do you think in those little moments of when you capture those glimpses, maybe it was in the past, but I think I've had those moments in my career where that's where the breakthrough happened.
Yeah, 100%.
I think I finally understand what we're supposed to be doing here.
Oh, 100%. Let me tell you the story. That's such a good story. I was at Danone and we were doing this big project that internally was talked about as the project that no one should ever do because everyone is going to be destroyed if they try to do this. Fear everywhere. Like people are afraid that they could never get it through with whoever, that the leaders were not going to do it. And I'm like, but why are we?
Because you're asking the question that a designer should ask.
Like, why? And so it became, and given that I had a really good support system there, so that is also something to be very thankful for. We held meetings with the CEO, his direct reports, and me. And that's, just to put in context, I was a senior director at Danone. There were at least 5 levels above me to the CEO. But for that very big, hairy project, we talked and I asked for help and I said, I don't believe this is going to be successful if we don't have direct access all the way up.
Right.
Because everything that everyone is afraid of is, imaginary audience, please raise your hand if you've had a project go into a giant fucking hellscape because approval levels and decision-making was a shit show. Oh, you're being so kind.
There was hands behind you too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But mostly, we don't have a software problem. We don't have my Illustrator isn't working fast enough. We have the decision maker is not in the room. I don't have access to this. I don't have, so.
Well, and to clarity in those 5 layers in between, those people are trying to manage translation. We think he's going to like this. And that's a horrible place to be.
The higher you go, the less of a % of that person's life what I'm doing represents. So this big project that was like the entire life of some people in my team, part of my life, is the CEO, I don't know, maybe 2%, maybe of his life. But having the ability to be in, and it was virtual because it was in the middle of COVID, but being able to have a conversation and to actually ask things and to actually put ourselves, it was very nerve-wracking and terrifying because I was talking with the CEO and the CMO and my boss and saying, we're not going to see creative right now. We're going to see a provocation that is going to level set what we were doing for this thing. And out of here, what we expect is a discussion because we want to hear from you. What does this make you feel? And I'm here representing work that my team with an agency combined, not the agency doing the sexy thing and my team implementing it.
Right.
Them combining and us being one team, what we're working on, and you're part of this team. And that is unheard of. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I hear people in-house saying, like, I never talked with the CEO. And it's really amazing to see that they were all, this year, like, there were some times that, like, he had, like, his kids running in the background, or they would talk about how...
That's straight up COVID, too.
Yeah, and, and the person that reported to him, the CMO, if you will, so we were able to, like, put ourselves in the space as humans to actually be able to do the work. And that to me was, it had happened before in other things, but that was such a intentional representation of what this could look like if we stop talking trash about the client, if we stop protecting the creative process, if we actually start opening it in ways that includes what every single person as a creative being has to add to it. Not that they're going to say it needs to be blue, it needs to be red, it needs to be purple, but these people are humans. If we don't include them, we're missing out on a huge amount of repertoire that we don't have access to.
Well, and I know we can go on this all day. I want to ask you if there was one thing that creatives in this room can do today to feel better or change the processes they're working in. What is it?
It's terrifying, but what if at the beginning of anything that you're doing, you can do a version of what I just said, like my hands are dead cold, starting to sweat. Okay, stop here. Starting to sweat. I am, and the reason why is because, I'm here, like, I can talk a big game, but it's been 5 months. I've had my thing up and running.
Yeah.
I'm not like slamming away at every
career to be thinking about like this.
Yeah.
This arrival
it's
moment.
It's decades in the making.
But it too is, I think it's what you're doing is exemplary of all the things that you've kind of learned along the way. And so, like, to me, it's super interesting to think about, like, when I got introduced to you and I was like looking up your background and things like that and figuring out where you had arrived at. It wasn't just there's not a 5-month chunk. There was like, it might be the example of where you're starting to test things out. And I thought it was really even telling in your podcast the other day that you were kind of saying that we canned some shows because, like, some of the things that were coming up had, when you make podcasts, you record them and then they kind of go into storage for a little bit and then you release them. But in the time frame that it happened, your thinking
so
around
much
stuff had changed.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to someone and they kind of called him out on something he had said a few months prior regarding this one project. And then they said, hey, when you started this, you said X, Y, and Z. And no fear, he's like, I know more now. Yeah. And I'm like, I think that's such a beautiful place to be.
Things can change.
But a lot of people don't have that. I just love it that you're unveiling that it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to
Yeah.
not know. And I think that's the biggest thing is like everyone wants to show up in the creative profession as we're experts or we know what we're doing. And I still think that has to be there, but it's not the first thing that gets talked about. And
You can be an expert and be afraid. That's
totally,
okay.
yes.
You can
fully agree.
know all of your shit. Oh, wow.
I did that.
Things are like,
Yep. That was my fault.
this was because it was so impactful. We're talking about, you can know everything about the thing that you're offering and be anxious. You can have so much experience and yet not have a single clue how you're going to do this next thing. That's okay. That's all allowed.
But I think that's all part of the creative process.
Yeah, but we have to start from there.
Yes.
Because if we start from, I know what I'm doing, then we're already kind of like, already
Braced against it.
Yeah. And that is just not going, you need those 5 ingredients. Every single creative being need those 5 ingredients. I didn't make that up.
Right.
I'm just introducing and showing, but I didn't make this up. And without those, your ability to create is going to be inhibited, impaled, and the thing that you're trying to sell is going to come at like a third of what it could be. And sustainability is being able to utilize every single resource to its max. So the way that we employ those budgets needs to be matched with as much as high octane, but solar powered high octane creativity and energy, because otherwise we're just already starting off as being irresponsible with the resources that we have as humans and that we are using to create the thing that we're creating. And responsibility starts with us. Like don't wait until someone comes save you. No one is coming to save us.
True.
No one.
Well, and I think we're going to, that's a beautiful endpoint to this. And because we're going to keep going for so long, I want to make sure that everybody in this room, if the survey,
Yes.
I'd love for them to take the survey.
Yes.
How do we get to the survey? So
Yes.
right now, Faye and her partner are running a survey on just kind of how creatives are feeling at the moment.
Yes.
How do they go find that?
So zerowastecreatives.com is our website.
And there's a big button on it.
Yes, there's a giant button on it.
Take the survey, everybody.
Take the survey. Tell your friends to take the survey. Right now, we are very heavy on creatives with like around 7 to 10 years of experience. We need every creative in
I'm
every.
like 100 years.
I know, we have centennials too. But we want a real representation. So the title of the survey is Creative Voices Heard. It's going to become a report that is going to be launched in September with a real picture of, do people in this field think that their creative careers are sustainable? Why? And so we're in the hundreds of responses now, not in the high hundreds, in the low hundreds. My dream come true would be if we could get to over 1,000. And it's like I have zero resources behind it because it's me and Brandy Parker, my co-host in Zero Waste Creatives, the podcast, doing it. And we're not millionaires.
Well, now you have this team behind
yes.
you.
So I will ask that you volunteer with literally no pay from me, but with the motivation that we're going to speak about it. There is How Design Live coming to Denver. We're having the second keynote on Monday, September 23rd, where we're going to be revealing the first piece of the report. And then we're going to launch the report online for free download and hopefully becomes a tool to talk about those things for creatives so that they can talk to their bosses, their creative directors, their clients on here's what's really happening in the world according to the simple people. So it takes maybe 10 minutes to take the survey. Please, please, please do tell all of your friends to do it. And maybe someday in the 3rd or 4th annual survey, everyone will get a little token. But for now, it needs to be your goodwill.
Patches. Well,
Yes,
thank you, Faye.
anything. Thank you.
That was awesome. So most of the time, this is a First Friday event, and we know this month was messed up. Please join us First Friday in August for a special guest. Big thanks to our friends Buck Ross and Coop Studios. You can now catch us anywhere you guys listen to podcasts. Give us a follow on Instagram. That's the best way to check out our schedule, upcoming guests. It'll be the best reminder you have. We thank you all, love you all. Thank you so much for being part of my community, and thank you, Faye.
Thank you so much.